we want to work with the cruise line industry to ensure that when we come through this, that cruise lines and the medical services that are available can prosper for many years to come.
It's a great industry. It's a very important industry, and we will be helping them.
Cruise lines could get some help from the administration in the weeks ahead. Part of the economic damage hitting the cruise lines could come from a wave of lawsuits, like the one a Florida couple has filed in federal court seeking $1 million or more in damages. They were stuck on the coronavirus quarantined Grand Princess cruise that docked this week in Oakland, California. Do they and others, and there's already a second lawsuit, have a coronavirus case against the cruise lines? It's time for Night Court. Our Legal Eagles attorneys David Bruno and Bob Bianchi in person. Good to see you all.
Good to see you, Shannon.
Okay, so let's start with Exhibit A. Bob, this is for you. This comes from the complaint from the couple. They say it would only stand to reason that having experienced such a traumatic outbreak, because one of the previous cruises did have some coronavirus people on it, on board one of its vessels less than a month prior to the current voyage on board the Grand Princess, that the defendant would have learned to take all necessary precautions to keep its passengers, crew, and the general public safe. They say they didn't do it.
Okay, Shannon, I'm a cruiser, so I know the cruise lines and what they do and how they clean these boats very well. I feel horrible for these people, don't get me wrong, but the norovirus and other viruses are on those ships all the time. And those people are cleaning left and right. They have people at the stations when you're getting food, squirting sanitizer in your hand. And they have an ability when the norovirus, which is the more typical one, occurs, to be able to eradicate that virus by using various protocols, procedures, and cleaning processes. So if this company did do those things, then it's going to make it very difficult, because the law requires, so long as the cruise ship use reasonable measures, it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be pristine, but reasonable, which I would bet, based on my experience with cruise companies, they did, then your lawsuit is not a good one, especially in this one where these two people didn't even get the disease.
Well, they haven't tested positive yet, as far as we know. But here's what happened. They picked up a cruise on a leg that 62 passengers from the previous cruise on the same ship who were exposed to coronavirus were also part of their cruise. So they're obviously upset that this was still ongoing. Okay, Princess Cruises Exhibit B says this. They've been sensitive to the difficulties of the COVID-19 outbreak that it's caused to our guests and crew. Our response throughout this process has been focused on the well-being of our guests and crew within the parameters mandated on us by the government agencies involved and the evolving medical understanding of this new illness, though I don't think we have a direct response to the lawsuit.
Blah, blah, blah. A lot of legalese right there. It's very fact-specific. And like you said, for the February 21st cruise ship, there were passengers that stayed on the boat, 62 of them. One was infected. And when they learned that there was a risk to the previous passengers, they sent out an email to the previous passengers, which puts them on notice, but they did not send any information to the present passengers, the people that were on the same boat with the same 262 and the one person. And then they get quarantined. So it's very fact-specific, but I think the email is going to take them down because they didn't notice the people that were actually on the boat, that the prior passengers had problems.
What about that, Bob?
I say two things. First of all, let's not forget also on these tickets, there's a waiver for filing class action lawsuits. So that's going to be an issue that's going to be problematic. And the other thing is, one of the big issues that occurred here was in Japan when the boat was stopped, and in California, the government agencies wouldn't allow them into the port. So they have this petri dish of problems, and the medical scientists have said the air quality is now circulating this virus, and they're not going to be responsible because the government wouldn't let them go into port and unload these passengers. So I think it's going to be a difficult case unless they could show they did not use reasonable measures. A boat can have norovirus, they can clean it, and they don't have to advise anybody about that. You get back on the boat so long as they did it reasonably. And like Dave said, it's going to come down to what the facts are with respect to that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's a second lawsuit that's been filed by another couple, and they identify, their attorney says they are elderly and they have underlying medical conditions. So they say, you know, our very lives were at risk by taking this cruise, especially when you knew about the previous passengers and sent them an email. Let me skip ahead to Exhibit D. This is a plaintiff's attorney, Jason Lohr. He's not connected to the case, but commenting on it, David, he says, it's almost an act of God, this virus. It's going to be difficult to articulate a duty the cruise line could have given the nature of a pandemic. Quick comment.
Well, Bob brought up the Diamond Princess cruise ship, and it's the same company, and in February they had a problem with the Diamond Princess. 700 cases, 7 deaths. So they were on notice of the possible damages that could have been, and they were on notice then, and then that makes it even more worse for them with the second ship that came after.
As you guys said, this is going to be very fact specific.
It is, yeah,
I think
for sure.
these two lawsuits won't be the only ones. I think maybe all three of us can agree that there's going to be more to this story. A lot of other cruise passengers, some of whom are quarantined still for a while, are going to have a lot to say in the courts. So we'll see. Thank you both for making your arguments. Folks at home, you're the jury. Let us know what you think. In the meantime.